Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Aut SA Cape's second webinar on perceptual skills. Today, we're going to be talking about using play to develop perceptual skills. What a pleasure it is to have you all here with us today. I hope you're all well, keeping safe, and especially if you're in the Cape Town area, keeping warm, because we are having a very, very cold spell at the moment. So, to introduce myself, sorry about this. I'm going to introduce myself in 1 second. There we go. My name is Karen Kaimovitz, and I'm the co-CEO of Aut SA Cape. We are an educational NGO that trains and supports teachers across the Western Cape and the Greater South Africa. I've had 20 years experience in the classroom, both mainstream and special needs. And then after those many years of experience, I decided it was time to get my head around training teachers and working with teachers, and what an amazing journey this has been. So today, I'm going to take you on some of that journey with me. We are going to be talking again about using play to develop perceptual skills. And if you at any stage want to chat to me further about the work we do at Aut or about the topic we're talking about today, please don't hesitate to contact me. My email address is there. It's karen@autsacape.org.za. Karen, spelled like Karen, but said Karen. So KAREN@autsacape.org.za. So let's get started with some housekeeping and ground rules for our next 45 minutes that we're going to spend together. The webinar is 45 minutes long, and that's going to include some Q&A time at the end. I'm going to leave just about 5-7 minutes for some questions and answers that we can share at the end. As we are going and we're talking and we're processing all the information that we're sharing today, please remember to put your questions into the chat section. At the end of when we're in that Q&A time, I will look through those and be able to answer as many as possible. If we don't get your question, I apologize now, but let's chat over email and let's keep the conversations going. Please remember to remain on mute. Even if for some reason you unmute during this time, please just mute yourself quickly, as it's respectful to all the other participants. And also to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be sent out after the webinar is completed. So this is, as I've said, the second in a series of 3 webinars about perceptual skills. Last week, Jade spoke about rethinking how senses can be used to develop perceptual skills. Today, I'm going to be talking about using play to develop our perceptual skills. And next week, next week, Lisa is going to talk about the importance of perceptual development in emotionally challenging times, especially where we find ourselves in this COVID-19 challenging world. All of these webinars stand alone. You don't need to have been to one to have a great experience at the other. However, it was great to experience all 3 and see the links as we go. So why are we rethinking the role of the senses in perceptual skills development in young children during COVID-19? Well, we've seen and we've heard and we know a lot about in our classrooms that learning is incredibly different. And while it's incredibly different, it's still the same. We still have to teach our children to learn effectively and be safe and have a wonderful time in our classrooms. But having said that, there are rules around how they can have this, how this learning can happen, and how we can support them, how we can touch each other, how we can have to wear our masks, if we're able to see each other, if we're able to work together in a team. All these things are different. And we have to try and make meaning of this as we are going. So why play? Well, if you were in our webinar last week with Jade, you would have heard that our perceptual skills is how we experience the world around us through our 5 senses. So it's also about how we interact with the world around us through our 5 senses and how we make meaning of the information that we've received through these 5 senses. We learned in that webinar, and I just want to recap for those who were there, but also for those who have just joined us for the first time, that we create opportunities to intentionally nurture each sense through sensory activities. We develop perceptual skills with regard to each sense. We must remember never to ignore our dulled senses. our children are in a classroom where they are with a teacher who has got a mask on. They can't hear effectively. Their perception of what we are saying, how we are feeling, what we are telling them, what we are thinking is very different. And we have to engage with them, understanding that their senses have been dulled and others have therefore been heightened. We cannot ignore that and need to use these as an opportunity to nurture and develop all these senses, both the dulled senses and the heightened senses, in the most fun and exciting ways. And very importantly, we need to remember to teach with intention. We need to remember to use this time to teach with intention and think clearly as to why we are doing all the activities and things that we are doing in our classroom. So today we're going to take the information that we learned from Jade and focus on the role of play and perceptual skills and the development of perceptual skills through the play. As teachers, we need to continuously provide multi-layered perceptual experiences and sensory learning opportunities through play. Again, while things have changed so dramatically in our classes, certain things have not changed. Learning through play is one of the things that will never change. It is one of the most important aspects of being in our classroom and working with our children. We cannot ignore the fact that COVID-19 has changed the way that our children learn, and especially how we allow them to learn and the rules within which they have to learn. As teachers, we need to again be adaptable and flexible and creative to find ways to reimagine learning through play in the school environment, all the while developing the children's perceptual skills. Sharing, collaborating, teamwork, all of these experiences have changed, and we need to find ways to ensure that our children are still enjoying the time and learning through play and developing all their skills through play, all the while in that safe environment. So let's have some fun, because really that's what play is about. Just to introduce this fun activity, I was listening to the radio the other day, and the presenter was saying, he asked a question of the audience. He said, when do you think your childhood ended? And it gave me some food for thought, because really, I thought to myself, my childhood ended when I stopped playing. Luckily for me, I got into the world of Autism Cape and teacher training. And so a lot of our training with teachers happens through the use of Lego and Lego resources. And so how lucky that I get the opportunity to work with teachers and observe them at play, because there's nothing better than watching adults relearn how to play and how to develop their perceptual skills through play. So let's look at my picture of my dinosaur on the left. He's complete. I've built him. I would like you to look at the 3 pictures on the right and tell me, if I had to break up that dinosaur on the left, which of these groups on the right would match my dinosaur on the left? You are going to be using all your perceptual skills to be able to make this great decision. So is it A, B, or C? I'm going to put a poll up onto the screen right now. Have a look very quickly at which group of Lego you feel would complete this dinosaur on the left if you had to remake it so it looked exactly the same as mine. Okay, so we seem to be having some technical difficulties, and so our poll isn't popping up. But I'm hoping that you are processing this thought. Oh, there it is. Has it popped up? No, something's popped up on my screen. Excuse that for a moment. But really what I wanted you to do was to use all your perceptual skills. And I'm hoping that most of you would have guessed A, because A has got the exact same pieces as it has got in my dinosaur on the left. What you would have done there is you would have used all your perceptual skills from your visual discrimination through your memory to see what it looked like, the sequential memory of how you would have had to put it together, analysis of what it looks like before you take it apart, and synthesis of when you put it back together. And while you are using all these perceptual skills, you are trying to work out which pieces you would need to be correct. But all the time, while you are doing this and you are playing, you are having fun. And so while you are using the most complex perceptual skill of analysis and synthesis, you're having fun. And so learning happens naturally. And there's no better way to teach our children than through play. So, learning through play is a term used in education and psychology to describe how a child can learn to make sense of the world around them. Children are naturally curious. They move, they experiment, they explore. They learn continuously through their senses. They need the freedom to learn and experience without a fear of failure. This, however, needs to take place in a secure, safe, and loving environment. This is difficult at this time to give to them because our life is full of rules and regulations at the moment, but we have to keep on remembering that safety will allow their perceptual skills to develop, especially through play. So play creates opportunities for a child to use all their senses, to discover new things through exploration, to understand how their body functions and moves through space, to use language and communication skills. There is nothing more important than teaching our children how to express themselves and to be able to give that information across. That and using the perceptual skills through play, we're setting our children up for the most incredible learning opportunities. And lastly, to develop their whole body. So at Autism Cape, we have spent many, many years pondering the definition of learning through play. Through our work with the Lego Foundation, we've been exposed to their work on play. And we feel that this diagram that you see in front of you best represents a holistic approach to this topic. When it comes to successful play-based learning experiences, the following characteristics are so important. Learning through play involves being actively engaged. When children are immersed in a hands-on, mind-on, playful experience, they learn. Imagine a child who is intently immersed in playing with a set of building blocks, which we're going to do just now. She's actively imagining how the pieces go together. Her immersion is ginormous. This immersion and resistance to distraction is a hallmark of both play and learning, but is especially powerful when learning through play. Making meaning is when a child can relate to new experiences because of something that they've already known. Children often explore what they have seen and what they've done, or they've noticed others doing. And it gives them a way of grasping to know what things mean. By doing so, they express and expand their understanding through a variety of media, symbols, and tools. Social interaction is an incredibly powerful tool for both learning and play, and especially when trying to develop our perceptual skills. By communicating our thoughts and understanding others through direct interaction, as well as sharing ideas, children are not only able to enjoy being with others, but they build deeper relationships and understanding of other people. Joy is at the heart of play, whether it's experienced as a pleasure, enjoyment, or just plain motivation. Just watching a child playing with a friend or building a tower, just getting it right makes such a difference. And watching them become so joyful through that experience, such a key facet of play. Saying that learning through play must be joyful does not at all mean that there can be no negative connotations or emotions in this experience. We'll talk just now again, but sometimes frustration with a problem is necessary in order to be able to feel joy at the end of the experience and when the breakthrough happens. Because then it's finally solved and you can feel that thrill and that excitement of what the work that you have done. Actually, sometimes even brings joy to a potentially boring or intimidating experience. Iteration is quite an interesting word. It means repeating something until we know that we can do it, we've succeeded. So from watching a toddler trying different ways to put a shape into a shape sorter, which again we will come to just now, or building a high tower, and every time it's falling down, but you've got to repeat it and try and get it the highest you can get it. And watching a young child trying to get that marble down the slide and moving the angle just so they get it right to work out how that marble's going to shoot across the room. Iteration means that they're trying out all different ways of problem solving and revising the way they've done it in order to succeed. This just leads to increased learning using your perceptual skills. That iteration is so important. These 5 characteristics, they ebb and they flow, and as children are engaged in learning through play. And all 5 are not necessary all the time, but over time, children should experience moments of joy, a meaningful connection, be active and absorbed, iterate, and engage with others in order to successfully learn through play. When you play, your whole brain is on high alert because you have chosen what to do for yourself at that given time. It's, however, not always fun, and frustration can be an incredibly valuable part of this learning. Look at this diagram for a moment and think about which 2 areas of this diagram you think would hold frustration. For me, so the iterative and socially interactive parts of learning through play would be the 2 that hold the frustration. Those 2 would allow children to really struggle in their time and get frustrated through their learning, using all their perceptual skills to get to the right problem, to solve the problem, to really interact with their peers. But it's valuable, and it's built into play, this frustration, because they're the opportunities of how not to give up and how to iterate and persevere and negotiate these social frustrations in order to collaborate and learn effectively. As teachers, it's our life work to model and guide these children through the areas of play so that they can develop the executive functions and skills needed as an adult in order to learn effectively in the years ahead. With this in mind, exploring the senses and talking about where we're going, I want you just to think about this quote from Dr. Karen Purvis. Scientists have recently determined that it takes approximately 400 repetitions to create a new synapse in the brain. Well, unless it's done with play. In that case, it takes between 10 and 20 repetitions. Dr. Karen Purvis has unfortunately passed on and has never left for us the real context of where this quote has come from. But we can take the concept of it and understand the importance of play. Let's go back to that toddler playing with the shape sorter. I'm sure most of us have been in that experience where we have seen our toddlers trying to get that shape into the right hole in the shape sorter. They don't try 400 times before they give up because they're having a fun time. They're getting frustrated. They're throwing it across the room. They're trying to find the right shape. They're using all their perceptual skills to be able to make it work. They're discriminating visually. They are using their tactile sense to decide how it fits in effectively. They're using memory. It didn't work last time. Let's see if I can fit another shape in here. And within sometimes 3, 4, 5 repetitions, they have made that work. They have succeeded. It just goes to show that through play and through repetition, through play, we are allowing our children to succeed in an incredibly safe and fun environment, and learning takes place effectively. So let's look at a picture of our brain. And no, not through biology, but through play. So I'm also now asking you another question, to look at all these different areas of our lobe, the lobes of our brain. Where do you think play does not have an impact? Which part of your brain is not involved when you are learning through play? So the answer is not one of these areas are not included when you learn through play. Each and every one of them are involved when we learn through play. In the frontal lobe, through movement and planning and decision making, through our temporal lobe, where we're affected with speech and behavior, memory, hearing, vision, the instinct in our brainstem, our balance and coordination in our cerebellum, our parietal lobe, which covers our intelligence, our reasoning, sensation, language. Each and every one of the lobes of our brain are included and work together when learning happens through play. This is a vital and important thing to remember when we are teaching our children and wanting them to gain that knowledge. So today we asked you to bring some blocks, Lego blocks, Duplo blocks, any blocks that you had with you. What I want you, and if you don't have blocks, that's also fine. Pretend that you've got those blocks and just think through what you would be doing in this moment. So what I would like you to do now very quickly is build for me anything you like with your blocks. 1 minute, let's build. Great. I want you now also to imagine that you were a child at that moment playing with your Duplo box, because we're going to look at that building that you've just done through the lens of the basic perceptual skills. I built a spaceship. Here's my spaceship. It's fantastic. Love my spaceship. So when I picked up my blocks a minute ago, I had this idea in my mind. The teacher said to me, build something. So I built a spaceship. What did I do? I had to find something that kind of fitted together as a whole. And so I found my 2 blocks at the bottom and I put them together. They looked the same. I was looking at my constancy. They looked the same. They might be different in a different color, and I might have found a brick that could have fitted it again differently. These 2 worked, and so they fitted together, and I used my constancy there in my brain. Then I looked for the power, and I found one that could actually work together. So these 2 kind of fitted together, and oh, this is fabulous. I can put them together. There's some closure. I'm actually using the perceptual skill of closure to ensure that I put my bricks together really well. I close that gap all on my own. You know, then I remembered I built this fantastic spaceship, but somewhere I remember seeing a brick the other day that had the letter H on it. And I've got a friend, his name's Harry, and I really wanted to put the letter H in. So I'm using my memory to go look in my pile of bricks that I've got still left over to look for my H. Just give me a moment, and I look in my brick, and I use my figure ground to find my letter H. Fabulous. My symbol recognition was there. I knew that that was a H, and I could put it all together. I'm now going to take apart. I don't want this brick anymore, so I'm actually using analysis and synthesis because I would like to replace that brick. I've taken my spaceship apart, and I've replaced that brick with the one that I remembered that I wanted there, because that was the perfect one. And I'm remembering what I wanted to look like for next time, because that's actually how I'm using my sequential memory. All I asked you to do in that 1 minute was build something quickly. And look how many of our perceptual skills were being used in such a short, fun, quick activity. When we teach with intention, we remember that every activity we do includes the ability to build and develop the perceptual skills of our learners through the experience of play. Let's look at which perceptual skills we spoke about now. We spoke through discrimination, because discrimination, if you remember, forms part of all of the other perceptual skills. We spoke about constancy, symbol recognition, closure, analysis and synthesis, which is, remember, the ability to integrate and combine the multiple perceptual skills. Memory, I had to keep in my mind and remember that I wanted a certain block that I had used or seen the other day. You might have remembered that, oh, you forgot a block that you would have liked to have used and you wished you'd brought it, because that would have made your build even more exciting. Sequencing and figure ground. I had to look through my blocks I had to remember to find my block that had the her on it. So just to recap, play is important in all the facets of our learning in order to develop our perceptual skills. We need to ensure that we make play part of and included in every activity that we do in our classroom. It is the way that our children learn effectively. What I'd like to do now is go through a few activities that you can do in your classroom. Because using play to develop the perceptual skill of our children allows us the opportunity to use all our creative, adaptable, and flexible thinking skills as teachers. And remember to teach with intention. Many of the activities we do in our classroom pre-COVID-19 were just done in order to complete a curriculum. We didn't think through them very carefully. What an opportunity we have now, where we are able to sit and think and process how we can change the trajectory in the lives of the children that we're working with and allow them to use play to develop their perceptual skills in a totally different way. It's also an opportunity for us to include and engage the children in our planning, to involve them with coming up with creative ways of learning through play without being too close to their peers. This will give them the reassurance that although many things are different, many things are still the same. And we need to constantly look for new ways to support and hear their needs. Many of the activities we're going to go through now are things that you could be telling me about. You're doing them in the classroom and you are having, I'm sure, the most amazing time with the children in your classroom. I would love you to email me after the session. Tell me about some of the ways that you are experiencing developing perceptual skills through play in your classroom. And we will collate these ideas and send them out to all the delegates who are on this webinar. This way, we can actually form communities of practice amongst us and start sharing our ideas. COVID-19 has been difficult and challenging to all of us in the classrooms. And we would like to acknowledge your bravery and your exceptional creativity in the classroom. We know that you are doing an incredible job, and we would love to be able to see some of those creative, fabulous ideas. So let's talk about some of these activities that we could be doing to develop perceptual skills within the classroom environment. Indoors, things are different. We have children sitting further away from each other. We have some children sitting in hula hoops or in taped areas in the classroom. And so we're looking for ideas where children can engage, sometimes even collaborate, but further away from each other. A tower build, which is always fun. We've just done a tower build. We did a build about something exciting, but you could make it into a tower. You can build the highest tower with a pile of blocks they've got in front of you. Those blocks can be anything, whether they're Lego or they're Duplo or they're matchboxes or they're boxes that kids have brought from home. There are so many ways to build a tower. It's even fun to build a tower with your group in your class. Everyone sits at their specific places and they bring a block to the center and they build a tower one by one. The class builds that tower. I spy with my little eye. What a wonderful game to be able to use to play together as a class, but still apart. Games that encourage our body and space concept, because that's where perceptual skills also gets developed. Simon Says, statues, shadow dancing. Remember sometimes to give children the ability to be the teacher, to be the leader, to have that responsibility. Cutting pictures from magazines, asking children to arrange them according to their function, fruit, clothes, tools, toys. Also an excellent example of how we can work apart and then work together with what they've cut out. It's also, it might be interesting to use the pictures that they've cut out to match colors. I've cut out an orange t-shirt from my magazine. Can you find something orange around the classroom and go and match it to something orange in the class? Absolutely fabulous way to do that experience. One of my favorite games. I'm going to Granny or Gogo's house and I'm taking. So for the older children, I'm going to Granny's house and I'm taking an apple. The next child says, I'm going to Granny's house and I'm taking an apple and a ball. and now we are going in alphabetical order. What we are learning, the skills that we are learning, the memory that's coming into this is exceptional. For the younger children, we don't need to go into alphabetical order. It's just really about what we can remember and how many things we can remember at one time. And so you can adapt it to the age that you're working with and the amount of children in your class on that day. And looking at objects around the room, identifying them by shapes and colors. Just because COVID-19 has assumed that we all have to be apart and sit further apart doesn't mean that we have to stop learning the important skills of our curriculum. It's just the way that we present it and in the playful manner that will allow us to function effectively and to develop those skills, and especially the perceptual skills in this time. So outdoor play is also a nice time to develop these skills. One of the first things you could do when you go outside is to form windmill circles, because what are we trying to do? We're trying to get our children to be further away from each other without going outside and saying, move away from each other, it's COVID, move away from each other. Let's find fun ways to be able to get our children to stand further apart from each other, because it's so rule-bound. Our world is rule-bound. Wear a mask, stand away from each other, wash your hands. Let's rather find playful ways to get them to stand further away from each other. Let's make windmill circles, which means that we've got to stand 2 meters apart from each other, just about, because our arms are out to our side. And then we can have such fun making windmill circles with our arms, having exercise time, wiggling your fingers, flicking your fingers like shooting stars, making fists, stretching our fingers out and counting each finger one by one for the younger kids. This can be made into something much more exciting and more intense for the older children, of course. Spinning around on the spot, balancing, hopping, skipping, all of this could be done where you started your windmill. None of this was stand 2 meters apart and make sure that you don't touch anyone. But rather, stand where you were as a windmill and let's have fun outdoors. And let's ensure that we are perceptually developing our children during this time. Cloud fun. Let's lie down on the floor in your spot where you are a windmill and let's look up at the clouds. And let's look at the shapes that they are making and how many clouds you can see. And let's make up a story about the cloud that you can see. And let's use our imagination to find ways to see about a story. And maybe even I start the story and you can carry it on, because we're seeing different things when we look at the clouds. Looking at the lying on the floor, looking at the clouds is an incredibly exciting, motivating, fun lesson that we can do with our children during outdoor time. And planting a vegetable garden. If you've got the resources, the time and the space to plant a vegetable garden, what an amazing tactile experience to work with your children and to give them that responsibility in small groups to be able to look after this garden in time and in their own time. So many of these activities are still challenging. And we need to remember that you as teachers are creative beings. We became teachers, we're creative beings. We know how to be flexible and adaptable and to turn all the games that we loved as children into things that our children can now use in this COVID-19 classrooms. Water play, dough and clay play, those are things that are difficult, but it's really about finding a way to allow our children to still experience developing their perception through play and allowing them the space to have this happen, that we can engage with them. So an obstacle course, there's no better way to be able to actually work with our children, because this can happen indoors and outdoors. Obstacle courses are always best done, if possible, in small groups, because it allows children to go through the motions. They learn the rules and to see how one experience leads to another. Each child will get their turn to do their obstacle course, do the gross motor activities, and actually you can do it with allowing them have nothing for them to touch. Remember to allow children to look at the obstacle course, to walk around it, to get a sense and idea of what they're seeing, how they fit together, using all their senses to identify what they need to do at each stage. Let them see, where does it need to start? Where do you think it ends? You could even put a start sign or a green sign at the beginning and a stop sign at the end. Ask open-ended questions of the children as they are going through the obstacle course. Ask them what they think they would do with each piece of the apparatus. This is a time where you can involve your children in the playful experience, in the play, so that they can be a part of this experience. What do you think we should do with this hula hoop? How can we use this pool noodle in our obstacle course? Ensure that they don't have to touch things with their hands, and that's very easy for us to do at this moment. And if they need to touch the floor, that's okay, but they don't have anything that they need to share, because right now that would be quite difficult for them to do. So they either need to have their own beanbag or their own ball that they work with during the obstacle course, but it's very difficult for them to be able to share that. Remember to let them be creative, and there's not just one way to do things, and to use all the words that we know we should be using in an obstacle course, over and under and in between. These are amazing opportunities for the children to move through space with their bodies, get to know themselves in relation to the objects laid out, and to develop their gross motor and perceptual skills. Most importantly, ensure that the equipment is safe and sturdy, and that the children are always having fun. As an adult, Albert Einstein remembered a pivotal event in his life that inspired his interest in scientific discovery, and it wasn't his science teacher. He was 4 or 5 years old and stuck in bed with a childhood illness, as one is, when his father handed him a magnetic pocket compass to play with. He spent hours twisting the compass and wondering how the needle always knew to point towards the north. Albert Einstein is quoted on playing with that compass, on how playing with that compass inspired his love for science. He said, and I quote, "I can still remember that this experience made a deep and lasting impression on me. Playing with that compass unlocked something deeply hidden that had to be behind things." As teachers, you love to see your children learning through play. It's incredible to hear their ideas and to see them learning about the worlds that they create. It's also fun to see how they can be creative as they put their imagination to use in learning about the world around them. To end off, I just need to reiterate that the importance of learning through play has always allowed us to understand that play develops intellectual skills, develops social skills, enhances physical skills, and helps to develop emotional maturity. All the while, learning through play incorporates all of our senses and ensures the effective and appropriate development of all the different perceptual skills. This allows for our learners to reach their full potential in our classrooms and beyond. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and for spending your time on this journey with us through perceptual skills development. We really look forward to answering some of your questions now and to hosting you on Thursday, when Lisa covers the emotional aspect of development of perceptual skills. The link for that, to register for that, will be in the chat box now. Again, a huge thank you. It has been an absolute pleasure and privilege to spend some time with you this afternoon. Okay, I'm just going through the questions. Thank you for all the comments I've got. So far, no questions. Hopefully we've covered all the relevant information that you've needed, but thank you for all the wonderful comments. I've just only noticed that apparently there was something going on with the sound, but please let me reiterate that you will get a recording of this in an email once we have downloaded the recording, and so you will be able to re-listen to it in your own time. And again, any questions that you may have, you will be able to direct to myself or on Karen at autiscape.org.za, or to the team at webinars@autiscape.org.za, and we will answer them timelessly. So the question has come in that says, we are told that the children are not allowed to play and move around in the class. How can we then apply what we have learned? So what I've wanted to do in the activities that we spoke about today is that each and every one of the activities our team has thought through and has in those activities that the children can do sitting very quietly on their own, or not very quietly, but sitting on their own. None of the activities that we have spoken through today, or very few of them, actually needs them to interact with each other. And what we need to do at this point is to be creative. Because playing I Spy, you don't need to move around the classroom. Building a tower on your own in your little demarcated space, you don't need to move around the classroom. Are you having fun because you're watching your peers doing the same thing as you, and you're ensuring that you're all building the same, or you're trying to see who can get the highest tower built, or we're building like we did, a spaceship or an animal out of our brick blocks today, and then we're telling stories about them. None of these are activities that need a lot of movement. Playing doesn't necessarily need that much movement. It just needs to be fun, and it needs to be interactive. And it's about being creative in order to access that. That's great. Thank you to see all the other comments. And I really appreciate all these wonderful comments that are coming. Thank you, Karen, and the team for sharing. This really has been an incredible amount of teamwork. Thank you. It was so enlightening to know we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, even during this pandemic, and practicing social distancing. Thank you. Great art teaching, teachers, Rosemead Central. You know, I have to end off by saying that I think as teachers, you are doing an amazing job. There's nothing easy about what our world looks like. It is an incredibly challenging experience. And so everything that you do, you are doing amazingly well. And so we are just here to support you and to reiterate that the work that you're doing is great. And we're just giving you some extra information to take back to your classrooms and think about it. So think about it, process it. And again, we are open to having conversations with you, to collaborating with you, and to answering all of your questions.